In the Voice of Russia World Service, we welcome you to another edition of The Christian Message from Moscow. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. This is God's 9th commandment. It is also the title of a story written by journalist and writer Natalia Suhinina, a radio version of which we would like to offer you today. Her books are bestsellers among Russia's Orthodox believers. Professor of Moscow's Church Academy Mikhail Dunayev wrote in the introduction to one of her books, Suhinina teaches orthodoxy, not dogmatics, of course, and not church canons. There are special books for that. She teaches the orthodox perception of life on the basis of simple examples taken from life. And now, listen to one of the stories taken by Natalia Suhinina from the maelstrom of life.
There is a wonderful Sunday that precedes Lent. Orthodox believers call it Shrove Sunday. It is a day when we ask one another's forgiveness, so that on the following day we might enter the pure waters of Lent, cleansed by our own penitence. On that day, I particularly enjoy being in church. People bow before the Lord with a simple and brief "forgive me" on their lips. The clergy address their flock with the word "forgive." It is on that Sunday that the Saviour's following words are heard in church. "But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." The 9th commandment of the Gospel says, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." We also like to repeat the words of the Bible, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." However, we are often fearful of seriously pondering these words. We are terrified we might see a black void in our hearts. In this respect, I recall one very enlightening story that happened a long time ago. The man in this story was a colleague of mine, a very attractive, talented, and wealthy man who could afford to pick and choose his women. And he chose another man's wife, a young trainee just out of the philology department who'd married a fellow student just a year ago. The girl was unable to resist the older man's attractions and his persistence. Their affair blossomed at their workplace, right before our eyes. In summer, they went for a week to the Caucasus, to Abkhazia. Of course, she told her husband it was an emergency business trip. We couldn't help gossiping behind her back and mocking her cuckolded husband. We imagined how the lovers would put on a show for us when they got back. First, she would come into the office as if nothing had happened, and then he would follow, and they would offhandedly greet each other and get on with their work. So we chatted thus for quite a while, until one of my male colleagues suddenly got up and said indignantly,
"This cannot go on! It's disgusting! This isn't just idle gossip. We are accomplices in this lie."
After that, he went to the phone and dialed the husband's number. Their conversation was brief. Then he laid down the receiver and said apologetically,
"I cannot stand falsehood. I opt for truth, even if it pains one."
This truth suddenly made us all feel ill at ease. Today, looking back after all these years, I still can't explain why I didn't rush to the phone and stop my colleague from calling the poor cheated husband. Why did I silently agree to the truth that he sprang upon him? Outwardly, it would seem that he had done the right thing. He did not bear false witness against his friend. Quite the opposite. He had told him the truth. So, did he please God in so doing? No, he did not. For it was censure that motivated his disclosure of the sad truth, while he would have done much better to cast his glance deeper into his own self, to see if his own life was up to par. The sin of that disclosed truth lies on me too. Perhaps it was not I who phoned the cheated man, not I who spilled the truth about his deceitful wife, but still I had been a silent and willing witness and accomplice to so much idle gossip and hateful words. Not once had I felt revulsion. Overall, there had been truth, but no goodness. There was a condemnation of our neighbor, and my conscience has known no peace for many years, despite attempts to shield myself behind the broad back of that truthmonger. You can never trick your conscience. I had sinned, violating the 9th commandment. Even if I hadn't made any false testimony against my neighbor in the direct sense of the word, my silence at the time, to be perfectly honest, was a form of betrayal. and another story involving a woman by the name of Tatiana. Tatiana was beautiful, an exuberant woman, confident and proud. She was not a close friend of mine, yet phoned me quite often, telling me all about her life and invariably complaining about her health. I was irritated by her complaints. Blooming with health, yet all she does is moan and groan about her pains and aches. I would tell my friends about her. While Tatiana continued to call and invite me over, always greeting me cordially, telling me about her admirers, and in the end, at the door when we parted, inserting the invariable, "You know, I feel worse every day. I am getting so weak." "That's because you're in love," I joked, thus escaping the need for a false show of compassion on my part. Then she would call again, and if her call caught me at a moment when I was busy with household chores or greeting guests, I would wince and think with irritation, "Here she goes again, spouting forth about her ill health. What does she think I am, her confessor? She is so used to commanding everyone's attention, accustomed to being pampered." Not once did I feel compassion for her, for I never believed her. I was sure she was just being temperamental. A month after our last talk with her, her daughter called me to say, "Mother died of cancer. The funeral is on Thursday." The burial service was in church, and the clergyman spoke in his sermon of how we all had something to ask others forgiveness for. I had the feeling he was looking straight at me, and my cheeks flamed from embarrassment, while the floor beneath my feet felt like burning coal. I had never offered her my compassion, never prayed for her as for the sick. I had disbelieved her every word and censured her. No matter how many times I might say "forgive me" in my mind, it didn't ease the burden of sin weighing heavily on me. Soon after the funeral, while reading Dostoevsky, I came across words that blazed a trail in my soul. Each one of us is to blame before everyone else. The sorrow of that story is ever with me. Of course, it taught me to look closely at people, try to go deeper, beyond their smiles and joking mien, lavish makeup and prosperous looks. On several occasions, I subjected myself to the following experiment. I would time myself and say, "As of now, I shall try not to censure anyone for 30 minutes. Well, I could manage no more than 7 minutes. After that, if not my tongue, then my thoughts would begin to formulate something contemptible, and I would be forced to curtail the experiment, aghast at the deplorable sinfulness of my corroded heart. We read in Orthodox literature about the peace in the hearts of the Holy Fathers, the recluses and elders who lived in solitude. We do not have this peace in our hearts. As to why? In inhaling the noxious air of sin, clouding our daily existence, we poison our flesh and blood and sow discord in our souls. And where there is discord, there can be no peace.
You are listening to a radio version of a story by Orthodox journalist Natalia Suhinina. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Next time we shall acquaint you with another story by the same author, who is very popular with the Orthodox readers in our country. And there we end another edition of the Christian Message from Moscow, directed by Vladimir Dumin, editor of the text and music Tatiana Shvetsova, sound engineer Yelena Gashennikova, and your host Svetlana Yakimenko
and Pavel Novichkov. Join us for the next program exactly in a week's time.
Goodbye, and may God save you all. As a follow-up, we offer you a piece of Russian Orthodox music.
С